What an amazing morning, isn't it? And I first want to thank Sol for actually forcing speakers to tell stories. I tell you, it's horrible in the sense that you have to put yourself in a place where you really usually aren't. I talk about business models, value propositions. Doing this is very different. So I would like to thank Sol and the team, Tori, everybody from BIF for putting this together and sticking to the format. It's hard to get speakers to do this. Thank you very much. I think we should all say thank you for this. Okay, so when I was invited to stand on the stage again, I was honored, but then in the airplane, it kind of said, what am I going to talk about? Because I talked about business models, about the book we did, how we innovated. Last year, I talked about failure, why I want my kids to fail. And actually, we let our son fail in school. Funny, right? And he understood now that he shouldn't be doing things the way he thought is right because he failed. If we would have forced him to do things the way we thought was right, he wouldn't have believed us. So that was pretty good. So what was I going to talk about? I was wondering in the airplane still. I thought, if at least I was Irish, I could make a joke and you would laugh. But I'm Swiss. So you're a kind audience. You laugh about have half jokes. So I thought I'll talk about my profession. I'm a business toolsmith. I'll show you a little bit about the behind the scenes, why I'm excited about the stuff we do and why some of it matters. So I'll talk about designing culture at the end a little bit and how we got there. So just the beginning of the journey was, for me, when I studied political science, with this, one of the professors, my favorite professor, François Masnata, he got us to understand that the world is the way it is because we shape it. Institutions are the way they are because we shape them. So I started to understand that things can be different. We can change things. We are what we are because we do certain things. The institutions are what they are because we shape them. And for me, that was an eye-opener because I started to question things, ask myself, could they be differently? Then I went on to study business, and here my longtime co-author and friend, Yves Pigneur, opened my eyes to this idea of business tools that can help us shape organizations, strategies, products, value propositions. So I found that pretty fascinating, and I really, fell in love with doing this. So business toolsmith is actually my profession, besides speaking and being a full-time entrepreneur. And the reason why I think it matters is, I'll take an analogy here. Anybody know what this is? It's hard to call it a mobile phone, right? Because it's pretty heavy. It's actually the first mobile phone, the Motorola Dynatac. I don't know if anybody of you ever had one like this, but imagine in a business meeting if somebody would pull out a phone like this today. You say, that's eccentric. Well, we do that with business tools all the time. This is 1985, this kind of stuff, right? That's when the Motorola Dynatac was invented. But hasn't the world changed? Don't we need better tools for the complex organizations we're trying to shape? Not just for business models and value propositions, but also to create better workplaces, better organizations. So it's not just important what we're trying to achieve, but how we're trying to achieve it, because we spend a lot of time at work in our organizations. So could we have different tools? And I think it's important because if we try to design organizations today with the tools of yesterday, we're probably going to fail. It's pretty tough. The world is pretty complex place these days. So another analogy that really kind of brought it home for me. So when I talked to a friend, Vern Harnish, and he said, there are professions like accounting or medicine that are professions, professional. Right? Like if you had to go through heart surgery or brain surgery, like we heard yesterday, you wouldn't want your surgeon to show up with a Swiss Army knife. Well, I think when we look at how we design our institutions, our businesses, our organizations, if you're not for profit or in the government, I think we're not even using a Swiss Army knife. Might be, even more basic than that. So what if we were trained to design organizations like surgeons with a whole series of very sophisticated tools? And what if we were trained for 13 years to do that? So we're trained in finance and accounting and kind of the operational stuff, but are we trained to design better organizations? Are we really trained to be good managers who create a great workplace? It's fair, inspiring, so we can do our best work? Not so sure. So I would even say, when it comes to organizational design, we're not at the Swiss Army knife level, we're level before. Don't get me wrong, Swiss Army knives are cool. Okay. See, I told you Swiss are not funny. Try to make jokes? No. I'll stop there. So what really got me thinking is this image I saw just a couple of days ago. I was at a conference called Mind the Product, and a guy from Google was showing this picture and said, the advances we made in images of Pluto, 1997, that's the image we could make of the planet Pluto. Okay, 1997, that's not so long ago. Today, this was this year, we can make images like this. Now compare that kind of technological advance that we've made in fields like this in science, compare that to the advances we made in designing organizations. It's just ridiculous. It's not that we don't know it's important, but we just don't advance as much. Maybe it's also because academia in business is disconnected from practice, but I think we could do better. So what if we had better tools to design better companies? Wouldn't that be interesting? So that's what I'm excited about, trying to create tools. Started out with business models and value propositions, but now we're looking at things like organizational culture. So, short detour, what does a great company look like? Well, number one, it's a profit-spitting machine. Some might cringe. You know what? Profits are not bad. Depends what you do with them. That's the question. But you want an organization, at least a for-profit company, to be profitable. And a not-for-profit and the government should still bring in more money than it spends, right? Greece didn't get that 100% right. Ireland didn't either. Then the second one is, well, what if we just didn't focus on profits, but we also got customers extremely excited? It seems obvious, like that's going to lead to that, but are you excited about your bank's products? Not really. It's not that they try to, I don't know how you say that in English, screw you, but they focus on profits without trying to necessarily, make you happy. So what if you could do both? Then here's where it really starts to get interesting is, well, great organizations should also be a great place to work. So if you take, the conversations around Amazon these days, or, even Apple, they make amazing products. Okay, anybody not have an Apple product in the room? Hands up. You can leave now. Another attempt to do a joke. I should really stop. Sorry. So what if we could get employees excited, as well as making profits and satisfying customers? And the last one, what if we changed the world at the same time? And that could be as little as creating a place where you have a work-life balance so you can actually spend time with your family while doing outstanding work. Because that doesn't always seem to go hand in hand. Advancing your career, doing outstanding work is often at the expense of other things. So what if we could change that? So what I'm excited about is that I think business tools can contribute a part to that. Obviously, they're not the answer alone because you need human beings who want to change as well, but they're an important part. So what do I mean with business tools? Basically, a conceptual framework that is designed to solve a specific business problem, okay, in the real world, and get practitioners to do that. So if we take these challenges here, in the work that my team and I did, We created the business model canvas. Some of you might know that. So that helps you tell the story of how you're going to make those profits there. Then we created the value proposition canvas that tells you the story of how you create value for customers. And one thing that we're looking at the moment is the culture map, which tells you how you can create a better organization, or the organization that you want to design. So let me just focus on this to give you a little bit of the behind the scenes of how we come up with tools like this. So millions of people adopted the business model canvas, have millions of downloads of the business model canvas, and people are actually using it in real organizations. So we did some research to try to figure out why. And people told us, well, number one, it's a very visual tool, very practical. I can bring it into my company. I can create better conversations about this specific topic, just one topic, business models. At the end, we'll get to organizational culture. Then another aspect is that it's extremely practical, and I can use it right away, and it's intuitive. It's not complicated. So we did this research so we could go further and create other tools in this space. And what we really realized here with business tools is that to get people to use them, people in organizations, they actually need to have a great user interface and user experience, something that comes from web design. So nobody today would design a website without focusing on user interface and user experience. So why don't business tools have a user interface and a user experience? Well, because it's an evolving, very young kind of profession. So when we did this one, here's where I'll show you a little bit of how we got to this. We created a tool that allows you to describe how your products and services create value for customers. Okay? So we have the right-hand side where we describe the customer. I won't go into the concept itself. There's this thing called the customer profile. On the left side, the value map. And it shows you how, allows you to describe how explicitly you create value for customers. So when we worked on this, we tried to find a better user interface. So this was the first sketch, kind of just putting it on a whiteboard with sticky notes. We were testing it. Then it became kind of something I could draw in keynote talks. Then together with Alan Smith, my co-founder and the designer of the first book, we started sketching out how this could look like. And we realized that this is a little bit broken, so we spent actually a full day just on the shape of the business tool, because we knew the user interface and the resulting user experience had an impact on adoption. We didn't want just hardcore fans to use this, but we wanted this to spread to millions of people. So we did all of these sketches to figure out what's the shape of this tool. Pretty crazy, right? You have to be nuts to focus on the shape of a business concept. Well, we kind of ended up then with this one, with a circle for the customer on the right-hand side, so like a head, and the left-hand side, a square which kind of represents this idea of a present, of a value proposition, right? And it helped us differentiate from the other tools, because I believe we're going to have a lot of tools to design better organizations. It's not just one. It's not a Swiss Army knife. We're going to have, like the surgeon, several tools. So we got to this one, and we tested it and really worked. And in addition, this is the end shape, we realized, hey, now you can put it into this business model canvas, so you have like zooming in and zooming out, so you have an interesting tool. So we created this user interface and user experience so people would adopt it, okay? So learning that, we thought, hey, what if we could now focus on a pretty difficult issue, like culture? Could we design organizational culture? Now, why does that matter, I think? Because if you look at how engaged people are in their work today, you have 3 out of 10 who are engaged, you have 5 out of 10 who are not engaged, and you have another 2 who are actively disengaged. Now imagine that you spend about 90,000 hours at work. Isn't that sad? That's crazy. So you have 7 out of 10 people who do something for most of the week that they don't enjoy doing in a place that they don't want to be at. And that's our responsibility, the people who build companies or manage companies. I have a startup, so this is important to me. I'm going to lose people if I can't get them engaged, and they're not going to do their best work. And I feel like That's a personal insult. So what if we could push those boundaries and really design better organizations and kind of think of this, like do the same thing as like in technological advance? So what if you could design culture became an interesting topic when I met Dave Gray, who was speaking at BIF a couple of years ago, and around a bottle of wine, we thought, hey, what if we collaborated on this? He asked me about his book, what I thought about his book then, and said their tools are missing. So what if we could design a tool together? And he went off and started designing a tool on corporate culture, because he saw a lot of companies in his consulting work that were broken. So this is the evolution of this tool, and then I'll walk you through it very quickly. So we prototyped it, tested it, evolved it until it became simple enough to really use it. So I'm going to end by just showing you this little tool, get you to think about designing culture. And it's super simple. It's so simple that you'll first think, that's ridiculous. So what is culture? It's basically how we behave in a team, in a company, in an organization, which leads to certain outcomes, which, you know, great collaboration, great products if it's positive, or political infights, you know, backstabbing, etc., if it's negative. Now, that seems like, oh, that's difficult to manage. But basically, you just need to make the levers visible that lead to the behavior and outcomes on top. So they're enablers, which could be incentive systems and so on, and blockers, which could be policies that prevent you from doing certain things. So this is a prototype. So we tested it quite a bit. I'll just show you an example. Have you heard of Microsoft, how's this called? This program they put in place, stack ranking. Heard of this? So the idea here is that every team is evaluated and a percentage of employees is labeled top performers, good performers, average performers, below average, and poor. Even if you have 5 stars working together, one of them is a poor performer. Well, guess what kind of behavior that creates? Superstars stop collaborating because they fear being labeled as poor, because one of them has to be the poor performer. Led to political horse trading. It gets people to focus on posturing and not on creating value. And the outcome is actually decrease in performance and innovation, culture of fear, and bureaucracy. So what if you had a tool to just make this visible and have a conversation? You put this out and say, hey, how could we change this? How could we change this? And I believe if we use these kind of tools, we can actually change this into creating a lot more happy people. So what if we focused on creating an organization where everybody in our team is pumped to get to work every morning? They do their best work. They want to be the best in the world, and we still have a work-life balance? What if we created value for customers, the team, and for ourselves, and for the society? How do we design those organizations? I think tools is a small ingredient because I've seen tools work in the space of business models and value propositions. So we need to create better decision-making and governance, processes, hiring the right people, incentive systems to get there. So I believe we can do this, and I'm doing it very selfishly because I want to create a great workplace for our team. I want them to have fun. I want them to, really engage and create great work. And I want us to do this as a society to create better organizations. I'm bringing my team up here next month to actually use the culture map. That's part of our culture, going to great places in Switzerland. I want you, kind of before the break or walking out, to think of this question. Maybe a little bit of food for thought. What is the one thing that you're going to do when you get back to work to design a better organization, to create a better organization? Thank you very much.